After waiting what felt like an eternity, King of the Hill is fully back. It's taken some odd 15 years and it feels like it's been twice as long since it's been announced, but we're finally here. And I'm excited to continue my review and ranking of King of the Hill. You can see the link to the first 13 seasons down below. Were they able to keep the series' humor and core values intact? It's been over a decade since the series actually ended, and that's a long time to be away from a series. Let's get into this and figure it out. If you want to see the final rankings and where these land compared to what I thought of the previous 13 seasons, I'll leave a link to the official ranking down in the comments as well. Season 14, Episode 1, Return of the King. We're finally back. It turns out that Hank and Peggy have been living in Saudi Arabia for the last few years. And since they've been gone, it turns out that things have really changed. And the Hills are having a hard time getting back to their normal lives with all of these new changes. The episode is a solid return to form for the series. Something that I saw talked about a lot in the lead up to the revival's premiere was the animation style. And honestly, I felt like I barely noticed it after a few minutes. Like, you get used to the newer, slightly less dynamic art style pretty quickly. The humor still feels like the classic King of the Hill style of writing. Like, it's actually pretty incredible they were able to take a 15-year break and it felt like they didn't miss a step getting back up on that horse. It's a little strange seeing Bobby as an adult and seeing him actually hook up with a girl. Like, he's still my precious baby boy, but now he's 21. Much like the Hills, it just takes getting back into it to accept things as they are now. Seeing how time has affected the alley is interesting. Bill has completely fallen apart. Dale was somehow elected mayor, and Boomhauer is a stepfather or is dating someone who has a child. Everything has changed, but the show still manages to find and keep its heart. The ending portion of the show where they're buying Girl Scout cookies and are simply told it's nice to be nice by the Girl Scouts as they talk about changing some of the cookies' names is such a good way to say that yes, some things have changed, but sometimes change is better. A fantastic way to start the new season and reintroduce us to the series in the new status quo. I'll put this at 50th right now, above Spin the Choice. Season 14, Episode 2, The Beer Story. Now that he's an adult and Hank can't just blindly tell Bobby what to do, we're open to new stories where Hank and Bobby can sort of face off against each other. It's a fairly easy way to tell new and interesting stories that look at the generational differences between Hank and Bobby. Even though the series proper ended with Hank and Bobby finally bonding, that doesn't mean that everything is automatically perfect between the two of them. Bobby is still Bobby and Hank is still Hank. We're also reintroduced to Joseph for the first time since the revival started, and seeing how he turned out exactly like Dale is fantastic. I absolutely love his strangely athletic move where he somehow does like a flip into a garbage bag disguise. It's everything that Dale wishes he could do. Bobby and Hank having basically the same problem, their friends and associates giving them too much feedback and them both obsessing over their individual beers for the home brewing contest, shows just how similar these two have actually ended up being. And the pressure the Wasana songs are putting on Bobby seems like it'll be a recurring story idea going forward. Peggy's also very fun in this one, seeing her so sure that both Bobby and Hank will name their beers after her and getting very upset about it.
Are you kidding me?
Feels like such a classic Peggy moment. I feel like they really haven't had anything for her to do so far in the season. Like, between Hank and Bobby having separate lives and plot lines, that doesn't really leave a lot of time for other plot lines or characters. So while we haven't had a problem with the lack of characters yet, we're only on the second episode. I could definitely see it becoming something of a problem where we don't see other characters as much as we're used to. Not quite as good as the previous, but still a really fun episode. Above 3 coaches and a Bobby, and at spot 103 for now. Season 14, Episode 3, Bobby Gets Grilled. This episode really focuses in on Bobby and his restaurant. We haven't talked about it a ton yet, but he's running a Japanese-German fusion restaurant. And now he's being accused of cultural appropriation on both sides. And it turns out that one of the guys who shows up is the grandson of one of the 50 men that Cotton killed back in World War II. I mean, I don't know how he'd know who killed his grandfather, but sure, it's a fun reference. Anyways, Bobby is trying to navigate all the struggles of owning his business while being called a cultural appropriator and having to tell his father that he isn't actually using propane for the restaurant, but charcoal. In the B plot, Hank, Peggy, Nancy, and Dale are at the George W. Bush Presidential Museum. Dale is unhinged throughout, as is tradition, and Hank is just happy to be around the history. There's a point where things sort of break down, and during a recreation of a George Bush crisis in a fake crisis room, they throw shoes at Hank, in what I'm assuming is a reference to when George Bush got shoes thrown at him. Really random fun fact, but back when I worked for the news, I actually tried to interview George W. Bush on the 10th anniversary of the shoe throwing, but only got back this really nice letter rejecting me. I really like this one. I think it's probably the best they've done connecting the plot lines and themes between both storylines. Like the first episode had basically completely separate plot lines, and episode 2 had basically combined plots. But this one does a great job of keeping a thematic through line and writing different plots. I think overall it's a bit better than the previous, just between Patch Boomhauer and the man who shot King Skredeberg, at 84 for now. Season 14, Episode 4, Chore Money, Chore Problems. This episode focuses in on the non-relationship between Bobby and Connie. They've kind of lost contact over the last few years. Bobby's been incredibly busy with his restaurant and Connie has been at college. Not to mention she's also dating Chain Wasanasong. Bobby still has an obvious crush on Connie after all these years. Seeing Bobby be terrible at texting feels like a good continuation of his character. He ends up getting set up on a date with Connie's roommate and he shuts her down in the nicest, most Bobby Hill way possible. It's actually kind of amazing how much they really nailed the character that is Bobby as an adult. It feels like sort of exactly who you thought he would be. He still has all these same mannerisms, the weirdness, the awkwardness, but he's got this subtle confidence in him and small changes that make him into an amazing character to help lead the show. I find that I'm leaning towards liking the plotlines focusing on Bobby and what he's doing more than some of the Hank stuff. And that feels really weird to say, to be honest. And the end of the episode shows that, despite where their lives have been taking them, that Bobby and Connie still have undeniable chemistry. I feel like the Hank plotline is one of the weaker ones here, at least for most of it. It does end on a fairly nice note, with Hank and Peggy finally confiding in each other that they're having a bit of a tough time with their retirement and still finding ways to feel fulfilled, especially since they've returned from Saudi Arabia. While I like the Bobby plotline a good bit, I think the B plot leaves something to be desired. This is the weakest of the season so far, right below Strangeness on a Train. Season 4, Episode 5, New Ref in Town. This is maybe the biggest jump the shark moment of the revival, maybe one of the biggest ones in the series, to be honest. Somehow, while trying to buy a car, Bobby ends up buying a horse instead, but that's the B plot. In the A plot, it turns out, and you'll want to take a seat for this, Hank actually enjoys soccer. He picked it up while in Saudi Arabia and is now one of the only people in Ireland who understands enough soccer to actually be a referee. This turns into Dale thinking that Hank has been turned into a foreign spy by the Saudi Arabian government. This feels like the most classic Dale plot we've seen in quite some time. He even ends up kidnapping Hank after spying on him. But overall, this is definitely the weakest of the season so far. It feels the most stitched together, like the plots are fully unconnected and don't really inform each other at all. It's nice seeing Bobby encourage Joseph to spend time with John Redcorn. He obviously figured out that John Redcorn is Joseph's actual father, and that's a really sweet moment. But yeah, weakest of the season, right above Girl, You'll Be a Giant Soon. Season 14, Episode 6, Peggys Fade Out. Something that I thought that King of the Hill always did well was allowing other characters to take center stage from time to time. We've had episodes fully about Bill, Dale, and even the rare Boomhauer episode, but we really haven't had one of those this season. Truth be told, when I saw this episode title, I thought this would be a classic Peggy adventure, but instead we're seeing a down-the-middle Bill episode. It turns out that he's been hanging out in a barbershop and told everyone there that he's actually married to Peggy, and that Hank has Bill's life. It's a whole thing, and while initially into the idea because she's having a bit of an internal crisis herself, Peggy very quickly flips on the whole thing. We also find out in this episode that Connie and Chain are in a non-monogamous relationship. That gives us the thematic tie between both plotlines. Both Hank and Bobby are very strongly monogamous, and seeing them deal with this is funny. They even tie this in with the rats in the C plot. Bill's commitment to not being himself whenever possible is funny, and his speech fueling into both his and Peggy's delusions is a great way to cap this plotline. And Bobby also ends up meeting a woman named Willow who he seems to have a pretty good connection with. I really like this episode. Willow seems like an interesting character, and I think she and Bobby could have a fun dynamic if they end up not going for the Bobby and Connie thing. Above the Bluegrass is Always Greener for the Time, currently at number 64. Season 14, Episode 7, Any Given Hill Day. Okay, well, let's talk about Willow some more, because she is basically Hank's worst nightmare of someone that Bobby could be dating. She's vegan, overly familiar, it's a nightmare for him. The dinner at the Hills house is such an awkwardly funny cringe fest, it's hilarious. The looks on Bobby and Peggy's face when she feeds Hank is priceless. The reveal of Willow being an incredible athlete is done fairly well, but the turn to her taking a dump on Jerry Jones' desk and Bobby realizing he needs to break up with her feels like it happens pretty quickly. We also finally get our first real Peggy plot of the revival. She's over phones and has started a mobile library type deal, and it's surprisingly effective at getting people to read real books and talk in person. But it turns out that she's accidentally spreading bedbugs around the neighborhood. A very classic Peggy adventure. The episode is fine. It's weird that they introduce Willow and then immediately dump her character in the next episode. On the lower end of the season for sure, 208 for now, right above Square-Footed Monster. Season 14, Episode 8, Con Schiss Uncoupling. Con's new voice actor hits the ear very wrong.
Ha 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 ha! Missed again, Hank Hill!
I get they wanted to recast, but when they replaced the voice actor for Cleveland Brown in Family Guy, they found someone who generally sounded like the original voice. I can see an argument for, it's been 15 years, he probably lost a bit of his accent. But Min sounds exactly the same, and it's just the guy's voice doesn't quite sound right. Anyways, it turns out that Con and Min have gotten divorced and are keeping the whole thing under wraps. That becomes more difficult when Hank finds out, and the Sousanusophones are also throwing a huge 30th wedding anniversary. The Chain and Connie relationship sort of feels like it's getting shoved in our face a bit. Like, I get it, non-monogamous, you don't have to bring it up every 5 minutes. Obviously, the whole anniversary party ends up going tits up. Everything goes wrong and the secret's out. Connie ends up breaking up with Chain, and we have more fuel for the Bonnie and Connie ship. While I have some thoughts on Con's voice, this is a pretty solid episode overall. It's not the best of the season or anything like that, but I think it hits all the right notes it's trying to. Right below another Con episode, just another manic Con day. It's currently at 158. Season 14, Episode 9, No Hank Left Behind. Good Hank's design just sort of feels off to me. Like he doesn't really look like he actually belongs in the series. That's really the first time I thought this, and the video call with Genichiro also looked off. Also, Genichiro's back. Anyways, GH ends up staying with Hank for a bit, and they end up going to one of those alpha male camp things. It's really, really weird seeing King of the Hill use this beta meme guy. Like, this was like I got hit by a flashbang. Seeing Hank go against the typical alpha male mindset is fairly funny. In the B-plot, Peggy hurt her leg and is having panic attacks in the MRI machine. But the episode ends up working her missing Bobby being around all the time into the plot, and that's nice to see. Bobby eventually talks to her while she's getting an MRI, and this helps her calm down. It's nice seeing this side of Peggy, and we've heard a lot about how much Bobby's been working, so it's nice to see that explored a little bit. We also get some Cotton Hill flashbacks in this episode, so that's always a plus. 98th overall, above Après le Deluge. Season 14, Episode 10, A Sounder Investment. This episode features the Hills deciding how they want to invest some of their extra money. Peggy ends up starting a boar hunting business with some of the guys from the alley, and Buck Strickland, who is surprisingly still alive. Hank's general confusion by what's happening by the quickness of business is pretty funny, and Buck is as insane as ever. Bobby and Connie go on their first date, and they fall asleep at the symphony. Not something you'd imagine Bobby wanting to do for a date, but I get that he wants to impress her. In fact, their second date seems more like what we'd expect from them, until she hurts herself, that is. I like Bobby and Connie sort of confronting that they might not have the connection they had when they were kids, but that they still have a new connection that seems to work for them. And that itself is worth exploring. This is a very solid way to send out the season, and shows everything that's been working so well in the season so far. A solid way to send this out. Season 14 Review. This revival works very, very well. In fact, I'd say it's probably the best revival I can actually remember. They nailed the humor, the heart, everything that makes King of the Hill so successful and amazing in the first place. Though you can definitely see some initial growing pains that are inevitable. Things like getting used to some of the character voices, the different animation. You can definitely feel parts where the animation feels like it's just not working. Some of the characters and art who weren't as important definitely feel a little bit half-baked at times. Like the pigs in the season finale looked really weird to me. But I think that the writing, the voice acting, and the characters are all as strong as ever, and this really feels like the perfect continuation of the King of the Hill series.